Hello. Yeah, Emily.
Hey, Brandon.
By the way, I saw you tagged a few issues with Help Wanted. Do you mind talking about a little bit about them later?
I tagged things? I didn't think I tagged them.
Sorry?
I didn't think I actually tagged anything as help wanted. I thought I went through and just commented on some stale issues.
There's a couple. You had one assessment listings. Well, you created that issue, so I don't know. Maybe someone else, but that they also had another one which is due diligence on members and disclaimers on content by the group.
Yeah, if you could message me what the numbers of the issues are, I can certainly talk to them. I've been going through so much stuff. I don't remember which one was
Okay,
which.
yeah. Let me send those to you.
Thanks.
Uh, I mean, if you think that these are kind of a little bit outdated and it's no longer relevant, we can remove the tag.
I
Um,
just want to either figure out if they are outdated or no longer relevant, or if they are, then we just need to move forward with them because they've been sitting there a while.
I think it was these two. I sent it over to you in Slack.
Thanks. I'll take a look real quick.
Yeah.
Did somebody forget to change the date at the top of the?
Yeah. I was working on that. That's my bad. What
Hi, everyone.
did? Hello. 0603. Yeah, I think we have to figure out how to kind of like move the templates from the bottom up. It's um crazy to bring them up. Hey Wayne, I love your background by the way.
We all could use a relaxing background these days. Oh my goodness.
Is that part of Zoom or is that your own software?
No, that's Zoom.
Okay, I didn't know you could do animated backgrounds. That's cool.
Is it bad that I shudder to think how much bandwidth the moving background is taking?
Well, it's probably like a GIF, right? And then it's just like
Yeah, but when like somebody else is fan blading on the call and somebody else gets to be able to have like their background, this does not feel just.
Change it to The Walking Dead instead.
that is also appropriate. All right, we'll wait a couple more minutes. So we have a couple of topics today. Tim, are you on the call? Yeah.
Hey, hey,
Tim.
Brandon.
Yeah. So I think the two items on the agenda were gonna be, and yeah, let me just copy in the meeting notes so you can write your names down. So we're going to chat a little bit about some of the issues um, that we had open, and we think some good issues, especially if you're looking to contribute some way. There are a couple that are good to look at, and then we have Tim, which is going to bring us back to the conversation we had on DoD container and Kubernetes security.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that we'll start with check-ins. We'll wait another 2 minutes so that people can resolve Zoom issues coming in. And then we'll do check-ins. We'll go through some of the issues quickly. And I think the kind of the DoD document is gonna be a lot of discussion around it, I believe. So we're gonna leave a good chunk of time for that. We also need some scribes for today. If you could help scribe, that would be great.
Hey, Brandon, just one other thing that we probably just need 5 minutes on is to update people on the SIG Security Day
Okay.
and what's happening with that virtually.
All right. Let me add an item right there.
I have it added as part of my check-in.
Okay.
Great, thank you, Emily.
Brendan, whenever you're ready, I'd like to jump in and share a little bit of context around Sarah Allen and update folks on that.
Okay. I was gonna wait another minute. Looks like there are a couple of people that are with the connecting on the Zoom call.
Okay.
Okay. Looks like everyone's connected now. So yeah, let's start with check-ins. But before that, we still need scribes, I think. If anyone can volunteer to scribe, that would be great. You can put your name down in the scribe section. Thank you so much, Kevin. Okay. Let's go through check-ins. I'll go in order. So nothing much from my side. I already have all the things I want to talk about and the issues, so we can talk about them a bit later. Payam, no update. Wayne, any updates on your side?
Nope.
Okay. Justin Kapos.
Yeah, I wanted to give a quick update about the Keycloak assessment. So I mentioned on the Slack channel that we needed people to participate. Thank you, Emily and Matt Hamilton, who I believe is not on the call today, for volunteering. And one other thing I wanted to say related to this is I had a pretty nice conversation with Matt that he's going to want to discuss next week. So if we have a space on the agenda, I think would be worth adding. But he's coming from more, and I'm not going to claim I'm going to do it all justice, but he's coming from more of like a professional security auditor background. And so the first thing, his inclination was to do when he started to do the assessment was like, let's start digging into the code and poking at things and doing all sorts of stuff like that. And I think we should have a conversation around that, because his inclination, which I think is right, is that if we had the resources, having somebody do a very quick poke at things like this might not be a bad thing to include as part of the assessment process, but would be also have a bunch of logistical and other problems that we should discuss next week.
All right, can you put that in the things to talk about at the top of the full plan meetings?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Thank you. All right, Dan.
So, quick update on Sarah Allen and JJ, my fellow co-chairs. So Sarah continues to be, unwell and impacted by COVID-19. We had, an opportunity to chat last night, and she's currently at kind of an hour a day health rhythm, and really in kind of an unknown state. So, definitely your thoughts being with her would be appreciated. She's stuck in Boston, away from her family, dealing with this as well. So, even worse. Her spirits are good, but, it has now been 12 weeks since she first got sick, and she is grappling with things like, is this going to be what life looks like? So, hopefully, over the past couple of weeks, things have gotten a bit better. And then, for example, the past weekend, she was just completely knocked out. So, it's tough to grapple with that. And, really feel for her as she's, working through this. In light of that, we together with our TOC liaisons and the co-chairs, have decided that we're going to extend my tenure as one of the co-chairs for another 3 months. And, my focus in that time will primarily be on, this particular SIG, this particular working group has kind of been at the vanguard of doing and evolving processes in the CNCF. And we'd love to, do that again with the selection process of the next chair that will replace me in September. So over the next couple of weeks, we'll be working with the tech leads and our TOC liaisons to put down the criteria that we're looking for in our co-chairs and try to define that process. So if anyone has insights on similar processes, I've gone through a number of executive leadership searches. They tend to be a bit closed circle things at the end of the day, and we'd really like to open that up a little bit more and make sure that we're leveraging this opportunity as an opportunity to grow and invest in this thing for the long term. In that, we may be evaluating, in addition to my being at the end of my term, there is the possibility that we're going to have to grapple with that Sarah might not be able to come back, and so we're evaluating whether we move from doing a individual search to potentially using this opportunity to seek out two individuals that could serve in this capacity if Sarah makes the judgment call that she's going to have to really cut loose and focus on her health. Thanks, everybody.
Well, I want to add one thing to this. So thank you very much, Dan, for agreeing to stay on and help out. I want to say also that the tech leads have are probably going to act with a little more autonomy and a little more in the direction, like kind of mini chairs in this interim period. So doing things like, for instance, officially the chairs are supposed to be approving the conflict statements for the people that do security assessments. But due to some of the delays that we've had, due to people's health and other things like that, I've been sort of doing that. So if anyone has any reservations or concerns about any of those actions or anything, we're not doing this, because we're, trying to we're trying to do what we can to do the right procedures, but we're also trying to make sure that things move when people are not available.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks, Sam, and thanks, Justin.
Justin, that's exactly what someone staging a coup would say. I'm not pointing fingers here. I'm just saying that's exactly the verbiage I would expect pre-coup. So making sure we're cool.
Well, we're going to send out the National Guard and tell them to employ maximum force.
Too topical, dude. Too topical.
Yeah. That's not for that.
Yeah, I'll for now. Name that is, but I'll find out later.
I don't know if you were joking or not, but that seems to be a bit of an insensitive thing to say, given that somebody's been sick for 12 weeks and is fighting for her life. I'll just leave that there.
Yeah, let's move on. So next, Emily, and I guess when you talk about Security Day, Michael can chime in as well.
All right, so a couple of things. So I have 2 tickets linked into my update 277. 277 is mostly done. It talks about due diligence of members and disclaimers of content by the group. The majority of it's already complete. The last thing that's outstanding is adding a section to our contributing to talk about when we're reporting issues that we find, such as a vulnerability or sensitivity in the security of a particular project, that we have a reasonable understanding that it's not confirmed, it's not official, it's a discussion, it's a conversation. This goes along the lines of whenever we're doing a security assessment, those things are not an endorsement of the security of the project, more of it's us looking at everything and being completely transparent.
Sorry to cut you off, Emily. I think we actually carved out some time to talk about that, if you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what 277 is. So that still needs work done on it. And then 206, I just need some folks to take a look at that ticket and let me know if the update that I'm planning on making to the ticket is appropriate. I just commented on it 2 days ago, and if so, I'll go ahead and make the update, and somebody can either work it or I will get it done. As far as Security Day goes, so I did a little bit of research and I reached out to Megan, who is kind of working with Amy, myself, and Michael about what's going on with Security Day. So KubeCon Europe turned into a virtual event. So there is going to be a virtual Security Day. It's day 0. I believe the date is August 17th. The speakers have already been confirmed. We are working through finishing up the schedule. So if you've already registered for Security Day, you should have already received an email notifying you that it has become a virtual event. But that's all the information that I have right now. I don't have any more details. I'm going to reach back out to Megan later this week when I confirm some information.
That is correct. We have a deadline Friday for speakers to confirm, I believe, which is why things are kind of a little in flux around like what the schedule actually is. But as we know more, you all will know more.
All right, great. Thank you.
Is the format for Security Day going to be the same as the rest of KubeCon, so pre-recorded talks?
That is the plan. I don't see like confirmation in your eyes. The answer was yes.
That's what I kind of assumed, but I was just checking if the organization was independent for the days.
Yeah, right now we're just waiting on the speakers that were currently in there to be able to confirm. Deadline for that is Friday.
Are there any issues with like the sponsorship and stuff like that?
Not to my knowledge, but if we come up with anything, we'll let you know.
All right. Okay, since we're on this topic of SIG Security Day, any questions around that? If not, we'll continue check-ins. Okay. So next, Justin, comment?
I just merged the pull request extending Dan's term officially because Liz had just approved it. So that's now officially done.
All right, thank you.
Nothing else I can think of a second.
Okay. And it looks like Santiago.
Sorry, I was trying to find the unmute button. I just wanted to jump by the concern that I have about the supply chain security catalog, and I think that we can have a conversation about how to make the contributions be a little bit more streamlined. It's something that I've been. I honestly don't know. I think that having somebody as with the commit bit on the repository as somebody who can take care of those would be ideal. To me, it feels that people are waiting for me to approve pull requests, but then I can approve pull requests, but I cannot merge them. So then there's like a lot of like round trip time. I wonder if there's a conversation that we can have on that regard.
I think we talked about having owners for parts of the repo set up, didn't we? I don't know is there an issue? I'm not sure. Is there an issue open for that?
Yeah, so we had the PR merged. It basically adds code owners for the various parts, and I think for the supply chain stuff, Santiago, your code owner there. So how it's configured now is it requires the code owner to approve the PR before it can be merged.
Right. And then,
Yeah.
but then to click merge, I can't do it, right?
Right. Yeah. Are there any PRs that are ready which are approved but are not merged? Like, can you give approval, or is that an issue that you can't approve it because you don't
No,
have?
I think I can approve. I will do a review, and probably we can do this offline. I just wanted,
Yeah.
since I've been absent for a little while, I wasn't sure if there was something set up in such a way that I could either just approve it and wait for it to be merged and probably ping the right person, or apply for like having commit bit under certain namespace or something like that.
Yeah. So I'm not sure whether the new stuff has been applied onto that path yet. But yeah, let's take a look at
There's
this offline.
324 is open.
Santiago, the way we found that we can sort of extend that without sort of adding a bunch of admin sort of privileges is designating code owners, and I think that would be entirely appropriate in this case. We could set it up. It's in the GitHub folder, .github folder. There's a code owners doc. It's not called code owners.
No, it's called code owners.
It's called code owners. Okay.
Yeah. Some assessments. Oh, we haven't added the one for supply chain yet. So I'll do a PR to add that, and then let's approve it, and then we can test it out with that branch as well.
Great.
Okay, sounds great.
All right.
Yeah, Justin's earlier comment, we want to enable us to move forward effectively. And if there anything, what we're grappling with at the chair level is going on for quite a long time, and anything that we can do to streamline that and empower the leaders in this group to carry things forward. We want to make sure that we're prioritizing that.
Yeah, and if there are any PRs that you think are ready to merge in that have the right approvals, you just send me a ping. I can just merge it in directly.
Okay, cool. I was thinking of just flushing the pipes as soon as possible and just take whatever's there, fix it up in such a way that we can make it happy, and then pretty much merge them as soon as possible so we can clean a bunch of outstanding issues there.
All right, cool. Yeah, let's sync up with that. All right, and it seems like no updates other than Tim, which we'll talk about later in the agenda. So I'm just gonna go through quickly the first part of what we wanted to talk about, and then we can jump right into the DoD stuff, which I think is more interesting. So let me share my screen. All right. So we have this help wanted tag. There are a couple of issues that are tagged right now. So if you're curious about contributing in some way, I think these are some of the issues which we've identified as kind of we'd really like to have right now. There are a couple here. Some of them are more process and governance based. Some of them are kind of like technical, a bit of technical work. So I think the technical ones are these ones like automate scribe process for cloud tools. This is really about like transcribing the videos that come out and they are posted on YouTube so that we can relax the requirements on scribes. Another one is markdown linting tools. So just for the repo to make sure that everything is kind of consistent with our star guidelines. And there are a few more which I think Emily talked about just now, which is the due diligence. So if you find something in assessment, what do you do with that? And also assessment listing, which is like right now we have all the assessments and all the materials for the assessment within the assessment folder, but it isn't really presented in a way which, if you didn't know the folders meant different assessments, you wouldn't be able to really find them. And I think the last one that we have here is defining what the observer role is during assessment. I think we talked about this before, and I believe, I'm not sure, Justin, during the last assessment, did we have a couple of people that were kind of observing during Calculus Studio?
Yes, we did, but it wasn't like, we've never really formally had this role do anything. It was just sort of like, I want to participate, but I don't want to actually be like asked why I didn't do anything in the end if I didn't do anything. That's effectively the way it's been treated. It's like a student auditing a class almost. So I think we could have a more formal process around this, but I also don't know, has anyone here been in that role and found it useful to be labeled as an observer? So I think that silence probably says a lot. I would be happy with just saying, I think more structure around a role that we haven't used is probably not that important.
Yeah.
I think just saying that they're not actually responsible, but have access to everything and should feel free to comment, and but that maybe would be the better way to frame it.
Okay, so not really like a role in general, but something like if you're curious about assessments and kind of want to see what's going on, you like, here is how to see where the assessment is happening, and you can, here is how you should, one of the things you can do, like click on the self-assessment link and read the comments and stuff like that.
Yes, and give feedback and be on the channel and stuff, but the observer is just a way to say, I'm interested and I may do some things, but I shouldn't be relied on to play a serious role.
Gotcha.
With that sort of de-escalation in the role, we had that role, or some of my aspirations in that role were to, have those individuals be mentees and, preparing themselves to become members in the future. Is it worth considering maybe not publishing the list of observers if we're not expecting them to do much?
I would be fine with that.
Lack of attribution.
I think that would make sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Have you thought about making them do the same as an actual assessor, and then just not count theirs at the final decision? Because that way is the better way for someone to learn, right? That they go do exactly what an assessor would do.
Right.
But, yeah.
Yeah, I think we really want to, encourage folks that are going to,
I think you cut off right there then.
There's a lot of work to do.
Is it just me, or is Dan really soft?
I can't hear him.
Yeah.
Dan, we lost you. You're really, oh, okay. I don't think he hears us. Let me just message him. Yeah, we still can't hear you. Sorry, Dan.
So you lost most of that?
Yeah, how around like after the first two sentences.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying that totally agree that individuals that are coming in and looking for mentorship and looking to participate, that is it'd be great to have them listed in the assessment and in that committing to doing the work. And then, we kind of deprioritize the observer role. If folks want to, come and be in the room, that's great. But we shouldn't be, really promoting that. We need more assessors, and we're happy to have, folks learn and, bring them along.
Yeah. So I think if you there were a couple comments that were talked about. If you want to add those into the issue, that would be great, so that at least those that were not on the meeting can take a look at some of the opinions.
Right. One other thing happened during the assessment process at QFloat this week that I wanted to mention really quickly. Sorry, it's semi-related, which is that we had a couple of assessors that realized they didn't have time to do the assessment, and they were really upfront about that. And so as a result, I was able to go and recruit more people to come in to participate. So if you, for some reason you're not able to participate in an assessment, tell us, because sometimes, it's often hard to tell the difference between somebody who is making a bunch of notes but hasn't said anything yet and somebody who really doesn't have time. So yeah, kudos to both of the reviewers that had to pull out for being, the assessors that had to pull out for being upfront about it.
All right. So any other questions on these issues? If not, I think if you look at them in your time and then you have any questions, so feel free to post on it or reach out to any of us. Okay. So Tim, are you ready to talk about DoD document?
Yeah, sure. Why don't I share my screen with the document?
All right, go for it.
That'll get us started. Let me see if I can figure out how to do this. Okay. Here you go. So you can see the summary, which I've shared in the group and also with a handful of folks who I've spoken with in the past, like directly Emily and Justin and stuff, to help socialize it. But this provides the background. Basically, the Department of Defense is putting together the equivalent of like a specification called a STIG, which is a Security Technical Implementation Guide. And I'll show you what's been written so far, and then there's links to an example of a STIG. And the high level thing was, what is it that somebody can do to control a Kubernetes or container environment, as in the case of the Department of Defense? And they kind of made it as a checklist, but in talking with them, we elicited, no, what we really want is it's to be something that's executed as code. And then the guidance was, yeah, there's some standard things which he knows we need to do and just kind of list them out. But he was seeking guidance also from the open source community for, I can't remember the exact term was it, but like the equivalent of like exotic, like not the basic meat and potatoes, but the things that people often forget and should consider if they want to really push the edge on security. So that's sort of what the charter is. And I'll give you an example of what things were done. But here you can kind of see, that was an example of the architecture. There's more detail on their actual PowerPoint deck, which they shared with me if you want to take a look at it. Let me show you what's been done to date. Let me just figure out how to share my screen here. Share my screen. Here we go. So, so what they've done is they've asked a bunch of different vendors like AWS, Red Hat, Splunk, to come in and put their recommendations. You can see my screen. It's a Excel file.
Yep, they see it.
Okay, cool. And so you can see they just put what it is, a short description, and I recommend, and I was communicating with the people in the process of the DoD, Nick, let's try to keep it as an if this then that, so that's sort of like it's easier programmatic as opposed to just check, because there's no remediation. It's sometimes they bundle it together. So some people have done it, some people haven't. AWS hasn't done that. So you can kind of see there's also a set of categories. So the STIG, that's what I meant. It's a security for technical implementation guide. And then here's how they've described them so far. And so most of these have been done sort of in March. It was just slow for me to kind of like get going, but this is like an ongoing thing, and they do want it from the community. I just said it's going to be harder because we're not a vendor. We can't just dedicate a person who's doing it. But here I'm just showing you kind of like the types of things that they have. And I think for me, what would be valuable from the community is a lot of these are like config settings on Kubernetes. But, you know, he's open, as you saw in that earlier diagram. Let me just stop this. You know, they have a pretty expansive.
Question,
yeah.
The vendor name, are those vendor recommendations for their own systems, or are those recommendations in general?
Oh, they're recommendations in general. Like if you go back to it, let me see if I can go back and share that. Hold on. That's just attribution, who authored it. So these were just companies that they're involved. But I did a spot check, and they don't seem like they're specific to their solution. A lot of them are just things like.
One thing will need to be done is combining them where there's overlap, perhaps?
I think someone's going to be doing that. I mean, I don't know how we're going to do it. I think the phase was just to get everybody to list stuff. The one difference would be that I believe is my understanding of what they want to do is if there was an open source tool, though, that augmented and improved the security, that's something they would entertain. Like they don't want something that's vendor specific, but if there is, as you saw, if I go back to this this diagram here that I showed you here, where is it? And then the actual source thing is like they have a lot of things here, and many of them they want to get as much open source as possible. Like they do have commercial products here, but his interest is how much can we get as open source. So if there's an open source solution, which is why I reached out to some maintainers of specific projects that augments and improves and moves the state of the art of security, that's okay too. Like you can say it's from CNCF or your project.
Tim, could you zoom in on that?
Oh yeah, sure. Let me see here. And I can open up the presentation if people want. This is like the summary version, and then he has a whole list in the PowerPoint, which I can try to open up shortly. But this is like an example of what they have already or they're looking at. And so you see it's a mix of commercial and not, and so that's why they invited a bunch of commercial. But he, in conversations and in just talking about the project as part of the kickoff, they want to have as much open source as possible. And so to me, what was interesting is let's not constrain ourselves to just what's a config setting in Kubernetes or on the underlying platform. But there are things like I talked to him and said, hey, we really need to look at supply chain. He's in agreement. And so I know that there's some projects that are looking more at the overall securing of the supply chain of the software distribution.
And for example, another one be, for example, using Falco to do host intrusion detection, which Falco does more than that, but to look at anomaly detection, I guess I'd say container anomaly detection, which is an open source project.
Yeah, I think so. And from his discussion, it has been like I think so. He hasn't written it in a document exactly that way, but in our discussions, he likes open source. He wants to push the limits on what is really secure. He wants to really make this super secure, and he doesn't want just sort of the meat and potatoes. Oh, make sure there's a namespace defined or close ports. Like he understands those things and wants those listed out. But I think he wants to have that. And then once we see those things, we've talked about having briefings with open source projects that can help him to make this. Like his end goal is if it helps to make it like drop dead secure and it can be executed as code, then he wants that as part of a consideration.
So this is Underwood. So I thought there's more involved in it. So I heard him give a talk about this last year.
Yeah, he was spoke at KubeCon, that's right.
I didn't see him there. It was a different meeting. But
okay.
The pitch he was making to other agencies in the government was, this is going to be an approved stack that's already approved. You can roll this in without having to go through agency approvals. That's
right.
Deal. So it's more than just, here's a nice tool. Why don't you think about using this one? It's more than that for the people who want to go down this road.
Yes and no. Yeah. So yes, he wants to have something that's been pre-approved because they have an AOT process, which is sort of, long, but it's not hardened, like meaning they're not prescriptive. You can only do it one way. That's he's trying to keep it open, but he's trying to say these set of things are approved, but it's not like hardened, like meaning you can only use this one tool. Because as you can see, he's a lot of things that are like competitive or overlap.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing that I kind of, at least my impression of the SIGs were that they were kind of guidelines for solutioning, and it seems like a lot of the projects, fulfill a certain role by themselves, but they're not really a solution on its own, right? So it's the ask kind of to look at this as a collective of multiple technologies and coming out with something for that, or to look at each individual technology and coming up with something on its own?
I would. My understanding is he wants to center on containers and Kubernetes. Like that's his focus. But as you can see, there's lots of pieces in that entire process.
So Tim, I want to kind of take a step back. So I'm familiar with a lot of the work that Nick is working on. I've worked
that's what I figured.
On this kind of stuff. So I just want to piggyback off of Brandon and kind of scope what the ask is, because the folks in SIG Security do this on a volunteer basis. And we're more than happy to look at whatever documentation you want to provide. But specifically what you're asking for, if I'm understanding correctly, is for a Kubernetes deployment. If the recommendations that are provided in the spreadsheet that you guys have already gone through, do we agree with them, or do we feel like there's any that are missing, or if there's any caveats with those items? Is that the first ask?
Yes, especially what's missing. Yeah, but for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is just for the Kubernetes deployment itself. We're not talking about the entire pipeline for things to be deployed into a Kubernetes production instance, running containers, software supply chain. Those are all later activities, correct?
So that part was, so here's kind of the stuff that he kind of listed, and so specifically, but he didn't want, as you can see, he was reluctant to list this because he didn't want to limit scope. So a lot of the things fall into sort of, how do you provision infrastructure? He was interested in what are the DevOps, and I know that we don't want to have scope get too big, and so it's kind of, it's a little bit fuzzy. Like it's how do you deploy containers in Kubernetes? But as we know that isn't just a setting on Kubernetes, there's some other things. So this is kind of like the closest I can give in terms of scope. He said, here's some examples of other things, but he didn't want to limit it because he didn't want to limit the scope in which people are thinking about potential attack vectors or security compromise areas. So that's kind of the best I can.
Tim, sorry, this is Payam. I have a question. So as you were sharing that last slide, I guess I'm slightly a little bit confused as what I'm looking at. So it doesn't really seem like anything outside of a secure CI/CD on top of perimeter defense and like continuous security monitoring, right?
I mean this thing here, yeah.
Right. So I mean, is the intent of that to create a platform that has, I think it was Mark Underwood that mentioned, more of a baked-in platform so that it's an all-in-one encompassing. You don't have to go and get all these little, all these different pieces and have to integrate them. It's just a platform with simple integration that provides you all from a step-by-step, from the SD perspective to CI to CD to then your post monitoring, your vulnerability management. Is that the intent, to just have it all in one?
So the primary thing, my understanding of the primary thing was, he said, I want a checklist. So if somebody's going to deploy something, this is what they need to do. And that's what that spreadsheet was. And I think there might be different groups, because it's pretty large, that are building and maintain this platform. So I don't think it's just going to be this one big platform and it's just self-serve and that's what everybody uses. I think the goal is a specification. Here's what you need to do to make sure that it's done. And I think they're going to use that and then secure the environment that they're creating for the different departments.
Sorry, just I didn't mean it, but from a monolithic one application perspective, just to clarify.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dan.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very unlikely that you know, this will be packaged up anytime soon. You know, back in the 2000s, I was a defense contractor and you know, built software to get deployed on the internal DoD network. And there's just a really extensive, you know, assessment and approval process. And so, you know, by having clear answers to all of the, you know, kind of reams and reams of pages of checklists, you know, you get through that process faster. It's
like an approval
boring,
checklist.
but it's a, you know, gold disc if anyone's you know, been around that long, you know, getting things through.
I'm in the process of currently going through the FedRAMP, which is it's you know, very similar to, so I'm just looking at this and I'm saying, oh well, you know, this to me it just seems like very much of making sure that you have your comprehensive secure CI/CD, and then built into a vulnerability management, and you know, however you package that up, whether it's, you know, a modular approach or
exactly
different teams, it doesn't seem like anything else. I mean, I'm surprised this doesn't exist. So
there is a version of it, and I'm trying to find the example as a STIG. So I think they're just trying to get more of a checklist, which I think the actual checklist isn't as robust, and it didn't involve as many people.
So leaning into you know, the vendor led process here. First, you know, since, you know, we're a volunteer organization, everyone's busy, it's crazy times. Is there anybody here that looks at this as, you know, as a, you know, vendor and, you know, kind of switch hats and be like, this would make sense for my day job, and I would like to, you know, sort of dive into this and potentially, you know, bring back or represent SIG Security, you know, in that process? Starting there.
So
go ahead.
This is Vinay here. Sorry, that's a great question, Dan. And I've actually I wanted to bring this to this forum at some point. And from a day job perspective, one of the things that I do focus is, you know, DevSecOps, applying security across the entire life cycle from an application perspective, if you will, that involves the build, deploy, and runtime perspective. So I do focus a lot of my time there. And this is also very interesting. And I put together a reference architecture, which I'd also like to bring forth to this audience to see how we can, from an open source perspective, put together a blueprint. So from that perspective, I have a lot of, how do you say, opinions and inputs for this. And if it's helpful, happy to contribute on this effort. From a vendor perspective, for example, bringing that perspective.
And would the process be like a vendor, because he has the time, can say, okay, this aligns with my day job, I do it. And then it's sort of like vetted or reviewed by other folks here. So that's kind of like a balanced thing. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
So, you know, just finding that, you know, an individual who's incentivized to go out and do that work. That's great.
I agree.
You know, then, you know, coming back and getting our approval that's going to be extra political work and you know, involve, you know, presentation, you know, maybe some creating issues and PRs and you know, discussions on Slack. That way we build the broader consensus. You know, we aren't in a position to you know, advocate, you know, with the possible exception of, you know, one of the co-chairs of the tech leads to, you know, delegate an individual to operate on our behalf yet. But if this is interesting and, you know, they're you know, it's a better way for you to get more involved in SIG security and, you know, tie that to your work, I'm very open to, establishing that forum and, working with you to, build the consensus necessary so SIG Security can back this.
Yeah, essentially, I also think this is great, and one area kind of that I see this aligning very well with is the landscape stuff that we're working on.
Exactly.
Which really, it's essentially what you're talking about, but maybe a little bit less opinionated.
Right.
Yeah, so I'd be keen to discuss that with you guys and figure something out. Maybe have a more in-depth discussion. Coming from a vendor myself, we also have some opinions. We've been working with a NIST for like a certified architecture and stuff like that. So I think that could be an interesting discussion there. I think let me open, or if Tim, you want to open the issue, and then we can talk about that. And if we find it valuable to have in-person conversation, we can schedule something.
Okay, cool. Did you see my screen? Do you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. So I just wanted to circle back to the question. This is what I've been given. This is the team I'm on with the DevSecOps, and so you can see there's just it's broad but not specific, and so that's why I'm keep defaulting. I think we need to treat it just like it's a checklist, as someone else had indicated. It may have been Dave or Dan.
And where would you like everybody to provide any comments or feedback that they would have in the DoD DevSecOps channel, or email you, or directly on the document?
That's a good question. What works for everybody else? I'm flexible. I don't know what the right form factor, whether we should have a document, people just add it like a Google sheet that we can then cut and paste, and then, or a Google Doc or Slack. I don't have a preference.
So I
it
think
needs to be anchored with an issue.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Okay.
Well, the issue can point to the Slack channel and stuff like that. But
okay, I'll put all that in the issue, like the Slack channel and the document, and then we can go off of the issue. Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. Tags that you recommend for me to put when I create the issue? The label that I should use?
I think if you create a new issue, it would be under proposal.
Okay,
and
great.
There will be some options you can pick from. So proposal, I think, will be appropriate for this.
Okay, super.
Kind of already, you're already taking the lead on this.
All right, great, awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you. Okay, so we have 8 minutes left. Any small things that we can cover, and any maybe suggestions for next week? I know we already had a couple.
Before Tim leaves, I guess I'm just curious, what's the current status of this within the DoD?
So right now it's still getting a lot of these requirements or these recommendations pulled in. Most of it was done in March, and then nothing's been added on it. We haven't had a check-in on the status. I think they just kind of left this open window for people to put it, but most people put it into March. And then the goal is once they do it, they go on the process of actually publishing it as a STIG. So I don't know exactly where we are in the pipeline, but I do know that most of the vendors already finished out in March, and he just left it. There's just an open date. I don't know what the exact close date is. I'm going to find out when I connect with them, but I'm having technical issues with their GitLab right now. So
you know, if this is, yeah, I was wondering whether, I mean, is this going to be associated with the RMF or the FedRAMP in some ways? Like, you know, FedRAMP can actually have a legitimate certification for the vendor's products, the services. Is that the intent for this one? I see lots of vendors here.
I didn't hear it described as such. It doesn't mean it wouldn't be, but it has been, in my parlance, a specification as a checklist of this is what it means to go off and do it. And as Dan said, it's to accelerate the approval process. I don't know anything about whether it's an actual certification an individual like vendor is able to get designated as. I just know this is going to help sort of provide some standardization. It'll be partly connected to FedRAMP, I'm assuming, and JEDI and all these other things. And then it's going to be made available outside of the Defense Department. Hey, this is what we think as a recommendation, and rolled into, I think, to NIST specifications as well. I just see it as a specification. I could be wrong, but that's my understanding.
So you mentioned they're having issues with their GitLab. Just happens to be my employer, so if they're not getting the help they need.
No, it's not because of GitLab. It's because I haven't been authorized, and so I can't. Okay. And we use a trunk-based development, and so I'm like, why can't I? But that's good to know.
I can help with.
Okay, that'd be great.
Let me know.
Okay, thanks, Wayne. That's awesome.
Just wanted to jump in. So I'm Kevin. So I work for Gravitational, and we're one of the vendors who are sort of looking at this as well. So I started showing up to these meetings to sort of get some insight there. So feel free to reach out to me as well.
Okay, cool.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, we'll look forward to the issue coming up, and then we can start off the discussion. Okay, any more comments?
Well, just about this general topic, I guess, regardless of what we do with it, this guy is a thought leader. Nick is. I don't really understand, because I'm not involved in it myself, who the other ecosystem around him is, or what DoD will do with it. You know, some DoD work gets done and never goes anywhere. It's still got value, though. Some of that gets spun off into useful work. So, you know, it's worthwhile tracking. What our official connection is to it, it's another story. But, you know, when I saw this, I thought, this is advanced. This is forward-thinking stuff. You don't really see this, even within the Air Force, who tends to lead the services.
Yeah, bingo.
Yeah.
Yeah, you hit it exactly right. And that's why I wanted to get beyond just vendors. And I think someone else noted they wanted more FOSS representation. That's kind of what I think and he wants that. And so that's why I think this is a great opportunity for, if you've got a project that you've been working on, or you have some perspective, this is a great time to do exactly what Mark said.
Yeah. I think even like throughout the process, all the information, all that discussion will really go into the landscape and help it as well. So that would be great.
Yeah, if there are things like what I've done, has been going through when I have time to do the landscape and seeing, oh, that seems interesting, and then reaching out to maintainers. But there's a way to make a pull versus a push. Like you guys know other people and say, hey, go be part of this Slack channel, get involved. I you know, that would help. Like this is a couple which I kind of already was in discussion with, like Justin, and I reached out to him, and then I just saw some others. But I have a very small surface area of awareness of the projects, and so that would be really helpful.
I love that metaphor. I'm going to steal that one.
All right. I think we're almost at the top of the hour. So thank you, Tim. And thanks, everyone. And thank you again, Kevin, for helping describe. It's very helpful.
Thanks, Brandon.
All right. See you guys next week.
Cheers.
Have a good one.